Hey there, welcome back to 31 Days of Horror, and we are on day 25. Today, I checked out a movie that was a new release on Netflix called Don't Move. And it's a very limited horror film. Predominantly, it really only includes the two main characters. For most of it, the rest of the film, it brings in one or two people here or there, but for the most part, it's just between the two main characters. Um, they're introduced to us as their names are Iris and Richard. Um, and the description of the film itself was interesting, was a little bit compelling. That's what, brought me to watch it in the first place. And it says, in minutes, Iris won't be able to run, hide, or even scream to escape the serial killer who drugged her, and the horror is just beginning. One of the reasons I had to read that is I had the description up on Netflix, but it likes to autoplay a little preview of whatever you're hovering over for too long. Even though I have shut that functionality off multiple times on my account, it still likes to do it. Anyway, so I thought that was really intriguing. And the premise is essentially there is a woman who happens to meet a man in the wilderness while she's on a hike, and he's presumably also on a hike. Emotionally, she's not doing very well. He kind of, speaks to her for a few minutes. He seems to be very kind. Um, and, they have kind of a nice moment together. And then as soon as they get back to the cars, then, one thing kind of uh, shows another thing, and it turns out he's a serial killer. He was stalking her, and it gives her an injection of a medication that he explains to her. At first her fine motor skills aren't going to work as well. She's not going to be able to hold things. Then she's going to have trouble walking, and eventually her legs are going to give out, her voice is going to give out, and then she's going to be completely paralyzed. And so the entire film, a lot of it has to do with timing. She sets a timer on her watch so that she can keep track based on what he's told her of what her body may do as she's trying to escape from him in the wilderness. And I think this is a really interesting kind of concept that the only other film that I can kind of reference the vibe of this to is a little bit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with. There was a film called Red Eye that came out many years ago that starred Rachel McAdams and Cillian Murphy. And he's an assassin of some sort. She needs to do something. They're on a red eye flight, and he's essentially like kind of preying on her, but they're trapped on this flight. And it's, even though there are other people in the movie, there's other passengers and things like that, it focuses predominantly on those two characters and their interactions. And this movie is very similar. The biggest difference is obviously he's a serial killer, not, an assassin of some sort. He's not trying to get her to do anything. He literally just picked her, that she's his next victim. So that's, that was his whole point in that. But it's a very closed kind of set. It's mostly the dynamic between the two of them. And overall, I have to say, I really enjoyed this movie. It's one of the few movies this year that I've watched that I can actually say was suspenseful. There was anxiety. There was kind of a wondering, I'm not sure where this is going. And I like that. I genuinely like when I don't know what's going to happen in a movie, when, they sort of introduce some premises that kind of subvert expectations of these kinds of things, or when it's just a genuinely new premise that I'm not entirely sure where they're going to go with it or what they're going to do. And I think that is where horror thrives. And it's been very interesting to me that Netflix has done a lot of these kind of Netflix exclusive movies, and a lot of them are very bad, because streaming is interesting because it's not exactly straight to video kind of vibes or like made for TV vibes. It's this weird in between kind of limbo where when you have hits on like Netflix, they're mega hits. You know, you've got merchandise, sequels, people are talking about it at the water cooler at, you know, at work the next day. Have you seen this movie? You got to watch this movie. You hear about it everywhere. But there are so many more movies that are released that have that little N in the corner that are from Netflix's production that have nobody's ever heard of and nobody ever will. They're the kind of movies that you sort of click on and go, maybe, you know, I don't know, I'm in the mood for something spooky, let's turn this on. Or I'm in the mood for something funny, let's turn this on. So it's interesting to me because the hits are mega, but the failures are plentiful. And I don't necessarily want to say plentiful. I mean, the fact that it's streaming and it has the opportunity to be seen somewhere is a success in its own way. But I think some films are done sort of a disservice in this, because the only way you can ever watch these films is on Netflix itself. And when Netflix decides that they're going away, they just go away forever. There is no DVD copies. There is no other streaming service might pick it up. It's once Netflix decides it's gone, it's gone. And it's a weird concept to me. This sort of impermanence of film now that we're moved to streaming. The reason I bring that up is because I do think that this is a good movie. I think it's entertaining. I really do think if you're looking for a thriller, if you're looking for kind of one of those nail biters of like, oh my God, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Is this going to, where's this going? Are they going to get away? Are they, oh no, what's going to happen? Like, it has a lot of those great kind of moments in it. It has the right emotions in the right places. It has the right breadcrumbs where they need to be. And it doesn't give you exposition. It doesn't explain a whole lot of anything. It doesn't give you a lot of backstory. It just tells you the story that it's telling you. And when that story is over, the movie is over. And here's your scare. And I'm a big fan of that. It's not necessarily a wrapped up all in a package. It's just, it told you the story. My criticism of a lot of movies when I say like I don't really like the endings is when you throw out all these plot threads that, you know, I'm like, is this going to be important? Is this going to be important? That I'm trying to follow as I'm going through a film. If they don't lead somewhere or they don't lead to something, then I kind of get to this point where I'm like, you could have made this movie like 45 minutes shorter if you just took all that crap out, and then I wouldn't be so confused, because I wouldn't be sitting at the end of the movie wondering what happened with this thing, why did you introduce this, why did you focus the camera on that thing. And so when you don't have answers to that, I think that's when the endings feel hollow, or the endings feel like they kind of did a disservice to the movie, is because sometimes, especially in horror, I feel like the writers throw a whole lot at the story to see what sticks, and then whatever sticks, whatever makes sense, then they weave the plot threads through that. But they don't always tie up all of these, I don't even want to say loose ends, these frayed ends that they've created by kind of just throwing all these ideas out there. This movie doesn't do that. This movie tells you from the beginning exactly what this character is going to be experiencing, exactly what she's going to be trying to do, and that's how the movie plays out. And so it's not there's no I can't give you a spoiler by reading you the description, and it's also not a spoiler for me to tell you the description is what you're going to watch, and I commend that. I know that everybody kind of likes a twist. People like to be surprised, and I'm one of those people too. But not every movie can be an M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense or Signs, where there's this big twist at the end, or there's something crazy you didn't think about. Sometimes the killer is the guy who says he's a killer. And the cool thing with the casting of this film, like I said, there's just two main characters. One of them was familiar to me. I am totally apologize, I'm blanking on his name. But the male lead in this movie actually is familiar to me because of American Horror Story. He previously was in, I believe it's season 4, I think, was the Freak Show season. I believe that was season 4. It was the season where Twisty the Clown was introduced. And he played a character on that show whose name was Dandy, and he was a very entitled mama's boy who wanted to buy people. It was the whole thing. Really creepy, weird, entitled character. Um, and he's played other characters on American Horror Story since, but Dandy has always kind of stuck in my head because he delivered such a commanding performance with that character. And the reason that I bring that up, and I feel like I said, I feel really bad, I don't remember the actor's name, is that I was watching this movie. He does play the male lead in this film. And that immediately, when he's first introduced to us, he's playing a very sympathetic character. And I'm like, well, the description already said, like, she meets a serial killer. It's got to be this guy because that's Dandy. Like, I know he's being nice right now, but that's Dandy. He's going to kill some people. And I hate to say that. It's kind of a typecasting thing, but for anybody who's seen American Horror Story, I think they would feel or think similar things. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because if you're going to be in the horror genre, lean into your the perception that people have of you, because that's what people are looking for from you in horror. That being said, when people go to see, big mainstream movies with really big mainstream, characters in them, it's really difficult for people to watch a movie and then see, like, Hugh Grant be a bad guy or see Brendan Fraser be a bad guy, because in our heads, those are good people. Like, those are people who are witty, they're funny, they play a charming person. You don't expect them to be, serial killers or terrible people. And the interesting thing about this actor is, I think that my perception of him is that if I had not seen him in American Horror Story to begin with, if I had seen him in, like, romantic comedies, and he's got the face for it, he could definitely, play mainstream, rom-com leads, like nobody's business. I think if I hadn't seen him in the American Horror Story kind of setting first, I don't necessarily know that, I would have been completely sold on his character in this film, but that kind of sold it for me before his, dark side was, revealed about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes into the movie. So I enjoyed this movie. And obviously that can't be a review, as I enjoyed it. I think, unfortunately, this movie is going to suffer from being on Netflix. Because I think if it had an opportunity to be released in theaters, I think this would have been a great movie for the Halloween season, because it's not overly gory. It is very suspenseful. And I think it would be a great, great outing for people to be able to go to the movies this time of year to see more movies like this. Unfortunately, what's at the theater around Halloween time when it comes to horror is usually something big. We have, like, a Halloween Ends. That's an epic end to an epic franchise. Right now we have Terrifier 3. That is probably the pinnacle of horror right now, is the Terrifier series. But that's also very specific. I don't think the Terrifier franchise is really for anyone except for legitimate horror fans. I don't think it's casual. It's not really for the faint of heart. And it's not a series I even particularly enjoy. It's more that I truly appreciate that in Art the Clown, they have introduced into horror finally a new, terrifying main character who has now been able to sustain that level of terror through 4 films, because he started in All Hallows Eve. That is horror goals for me, because everybody, when you're making a movie, everybody wants to have the Michael Myers, the Freddy Krueger, the Jason, the Chucky. When you're thinking of horror, or the Ghostface, the iconic, those are, the more modern, to then the originals of horror. You've got Frankenstein, the Mummy, Dracula, the Wolfman. And then when you have the normal players. You have, you know, Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney and Christopher Lee, and just those kind of epic names and faces that we really recognize from horror. And then, you know, when you moved into the modern era, then you have like Robert Englund, you had Wes Craven, John Carpenter, you know, you have Nev Campbell and David Arquette, and people that you know from, you know, the horror genre, from these big franchises. You have Heather Langenkamp, and you have all of these really like prominent faces when it comes to horror. I mean, I can even hold up right now my own drink cup. You know, we've got Ghostface, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, we've got Pennywise, we have Chucky. I mean, and this is just, you know, vinyl printed. This is just my, you know, everyday drink cup. Those are the faces of horror that we recognize. And the fact that the Terrifier series has come out with, you know, something to add to that, I think is great. Now, that being said, that's what we normally see in theaters around this time of year. It's something that's franchise worthy. You know, we get like Saw movies around this time of year. We get maybe a new Halloween if they're going to release a new, you know, something with Halloween or something with Nightmare on Elm Street. New Chucky stuff comes out. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But the problem is, we live in an era now. We don't have places like Blockbuster. Places like Target and Walmart, they sell DVDs, but they sell whatever's newer, and then anything that's older, it's like go online and find that. When it comes to movies, it's usually now about the streaming, which is fine, except like I said earlier, when Netflix decides that they don't care about this movie anymore, it goes away and we never see it again. At some point, there's going to be entire series that we just never see again. Excuse the noise. The dogs have decided to grace me with their presence. Anyway, my biggest criticism of this film is it's going to get lost in the shuffle of all of the other Netflix originals. It's going to get lost in all of the other horror films that come and go off of streaming services. But because this is a Netflix exclusive, it's not going to show up on another streaming service like Hulu or Amazon or Paramount Plus, which really limits the audience for this. Now, I know a lot of people have Netflix, but there's an awful lot of people who don't, or who don't care, who don't watch streaming. And I think it's a shame that there's a movie that could be genuinely enjoyed by, I think, a lot of different backgrounds of people that's sort of stuck in streaming hell, because it's on Netflix if you want to watch it, and if you don't have Netflix, then it sucks for you. And that's just not my vibe. You know, I think movies are a form of entertainment that should be able to be enjoyed by anybody. And movies used to be a relatively cheap way that people could enjoy some similar entertainment. They could spend time together. They could watch the same thing and then be discussing the same thing. It was a way to connect with people. But the fact that there are so many different streaming platforms and they all make their own content, and then their content is all stuck there, there's no physical media of any of that content, it kind of takes a lot of movies and throws them directly in the garbage, because they never have a chance to find their audience. They don't have a chance to find their voice, because they're just a screenshot and a short explanation in a sea of hundreds of thousands of choices. And if it wasn't for me looking for 31 enjoyable or at least moderately entertaining films for the month of October to watch and check out, I never would have given this movie a second thought. And this movie deserves better than that. You know, this movie deserves to be, you know, a year or two from now, it deserves to be run on USA Network in the afternoons, that, you know, a casual horror fan might pick up halfway through, or somebody who's not really into horror might get into it, you know, a little bit in. What's going to happen here? How's this going? I think this is an enjoyable horror film. It's got the anxiety, it's got the stress, it's got a very basic premise. It has a limited cast so that you're very limited in your view and experience of the movie, and it makes it more claustrophobic. It makes it a little scarier. It introduces different elements. And it doesn't try to do too much. It doesn't explain to you a bunch of shit that doesn't happen on screen. It doesn't explain to you anything that really happened in the past that's not relevant to the current story. And then when it's time to end, it ends. And all of those things are a big thumbs up from me. So I give this movie 4 stars. I actually really enjoyed Don't Move. I highly recommend it. And I don't know. Maybe if there's more of a demand from people when they see movies that they really like to say, like, hey, Netflix, I want a physical copy of this. Or please don't, you know, damn this to hell. Can you recommend this to more people? I don't know. But it kind of bums me out to think that, there's so many probably good movies that are being, lost in the shuffle because of streaming hell. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think about any of this. If you've watched this film, if you've watched any of the other movies that, I've done. See, this is day 25. I had 24 other videos if you want to check them out. And I can't wait to talk to you tomorrow. So, see you later.